Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 15 from Creative Collaborations Conversation with Veronica and Jillian. I'm Veronica, and I'm again, of course, today with Jillian. Hello, Jillian.
Hello, good morning. And today we're going to talk about women in business, a couple of things that we happen to know a couple of things about.
Yes.
So it should be a good conversation. Before we jump into that, though, we have reason to celebrate.
Yes, we do. I'm very happy about that. I have my
Yes.
morning tea here to cheer with it. So do you want
Yes.
to share
Oh,
the
I
good
have
news?
water. Yeah, I have a water. So
Still good,
cheers.
still good.
Yeah,
Cheers.
cheers us. We surpassed our original kind of goal, our benchmark of 100 downloads. So 100 people have downloaded, or 100 downloads of our episodes, we'll say. So that's a pretty nice one. So what is our next? I feel like, yay, celebrate. Excellent.
Yeah.
We made it. Amazing. I'm really appreciative of that.
And I think we actually need to stop because we are talking about women in business, and what we are not that good at is actually taking that moment to celebrate. And I want us to really take it in, and I want to thank every single listener out there that took time from the busy day and just listen to us share our insights and experience and just talk about things because we do love to talk. So
Yes.
thank you to all of you for being with us here and helping us basically grow, because I just see it as a growth experience.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for reframing that, because I don't know if you could tell, but I was like right about to say, great, what's our next goal?
I know.
So
I know.
yeah. So thanks for like pulling me back here. Like, nope, stay here. Because it is important. And, we have talked about this, several times. And that's a part of the conversation today of how tricky it can be, or how little time or effort we often will spend celebrating our wins.
Yes.
So I think it is important. And I think you're right about that, because, it's easy to lose sight of what it's actually all about, which is real people that are spending time, the most precious commodity out of their days, to download and listen to our episodes and participate in our conversations and whatnot. So I feel like that's it's a huge thing. So I also very much appreciate it. So thank you to you for listening today,
and
participating in our project.
Makes me happy and makes me confident that people take value. Otherwise, they will not keep on coming, and we do see an increase in the number of listens per episode. So that definitely shows me people keep on coming back and listening. So thank you for that. And it's nice to see that. Maybe we need to consider, like, I'm just gonna throw it out here, don't kill me. But maybe will be fun to see in the next year to have a come and greet type of thing. I would love to meet these people and to speak with them and to see what do they think, what do they like, what don't they like, because it's we can actually make it better. And I love conversations, and I love to meet these people. So I'm curious how many of the listeners are women and how many are men, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was actually going to, like, just was jumping in to take a quick look to share one little bit about, for any of the listeners out there that are interested in this kind of thing. This would be me. I'm the kind of person that's interested in, data and whatnot. So of course I had to scroll to this quickly, but way to go, US. Rocking 51% of the downloads right now. So
true.
Kudos to the US. So there's a little ditty. So that's my data for the day.
But keep in mind, 50%, the rest is Europe majority. So
is dispersed. So it's, all things being equal.
I think that shares our locations and our nationalities and networks. That's a good reflection.
Although it's interesting. So 13% from Canada. That's a surprising one to me.
I have to say.
Yeah. Thanks to the Canadians.
Thank you to everyone. So Funny, actually, that's part of the being a woman in business. So I can't say we deviated from the topic, because
Yeah.
that's a great example. Women in business. I keep on wanting to say women in tech, because I'm realizing women in tech, it's a topic that keeps on being discussed, and on good
Mm.
terms. Like, I'm not contesting that, but business is much more than just tech. So we
Yes.
have so
Yes.
many amazing businesswomen that they are doing so many things, and sometimes maybe they're not necessarily tech. I know I was nominated and part of different tops for women in tech, but I don't consider myself a woman in tech. Like, I
Mm.
use technology. I think you're
Yeah.
way better than I am at the technology. I do understand it. I was surrounded by tech people all my life, but I'm not
Mm-hmm.
a tech person. Actually, my
Mm-hmm.
qualities and my qualifications are totally different. So I find it
Mm.
interesting that we do celebrate women in tech, and we try to put them in the front, but we are not really focusing on the rest.
Mm. So I have a question, because it's interesting to me that you went down that channel of like women in business, oh, women in tech. And
It's
for
the same,
me,
actually.
no. For me, I'm also wondering, so just like the example you just used, like, oh, you just saying that you don't see yourself as a woman in tech. You're a
Mhm.
woman in business, but you use tech. I think similarly, but in a different way. I was thinking women in business. So, what about women in their careers? Because do all women identify as, what does a woman in business mean? Does it mean like female, or people that identify as
Mhm.
female that are business owners, or they're in a business, they're an employee of a business? What, it's a little bit
I love
fuzzy
the
what women in
direction.
business means. And oh, matter of fact, I have a prop. Oh my gosh, I have a prop for today's episode. Check this out. Hold on. Pause. Can we pause live? It just reminded me. Oh my gosh. So I'm like reorganizing my office and whatnot, and I just came across some relics. And it's so timely that today is the day. Check this out.
The universe is working.
I
Nothing happens
know.
without a reason.
See if you can see this. Can
Uh-huh.
you see
I
this?
see women in business.
Yeah,
For the listeners that don't watch us video, so Jillian just
thank you.
shared a magazine cover with me that says women in business.
Four of them
Wow.
featuring articles from moi. Imagine that. That I had totally forgotten about, and then I found them. I'm like, oh, women in business, and I'm like, oh yeah, this sounds familiar. Oh yes. Anyhow, I kind of like went off the deep end here for a moment, but yeah, women in business. I was thinking of that. But this is a magazine that's attached to a large organization and conference and events and such. But anyway, so just the idea overall is that women who are professional women, or like, what does women in business mean to you or to anybody? So I feel like I kind of went that direction as opposed to business versus tech.
I excuse me. I really like the way you presented it, because you see, I'm an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur. So for me, automatically, I was thinking about owning your business, your own business,
Mm.
and entrepreneurship area. But you make a very good point, because I do meet. Monday, I had a coffee with a former neighbor, a friend, that we became friends, and she definitely is a woman in business, but she's working for corporates, and she
Yeah,
is a
right.
perfect example. But you kind of start excluding the corporates when, let's be honest, we do work with them and we want to work with them, and it's about actually what we want to. I think the core is it's about how are we perceived, how do we want to be
Mm.
perceived. Does it actually matter if it's your own company or a different company? And now that
Mm.
you mentioned that, I'm starting to think it doesn't matter. It's about the attitude, and it's about our position in the society, and it's about
Mm.
how we want to, first of all, how do we want to do business? How do we want to work? Because if you
Yeah.
want to, you keep on hearing, just pull the chair and have a seat at the table. Don't wait to be invited. But you do see a lot of masculine energy, and I know I'm guilty of that. Until recently, I felt I need to be more masculine, or more
Hmm.
assertive, but not is not how to phrase it, not to.
Mm.
I know I can be assertive when it comes to business, but there's a difference between being assertive and keeping your femininity and kind of letting it go and being more tapping more into your masculine energy just to be at the same level, and meant to take you more seriously. Because definitely if you are sweeter or more feminine, for the lack of better words, they will not take you as seriously. They will say, "Oh, I'm stronger. I can come with better arguments or just overpower the person in front of me because of that." Or is that our perception as women? Or I kind of doubt that.
Yeah.
Though.
So it's interesting. I feel like it's a slippery slope. I feel like this topic on the surface level, it's like, great, let's dig into that. Like, yeah. But then when you start kind of opening it up, you're like, ooh, there are some areas
so many levels.
Yeah, it's like tread gingerly here. And there's like a lot of, it can be a minefield in, trying to use the proper language and not to be biased and all of these things. But at the end of the day, long as we know, we're just having a very organic, very kind of vulnerable conversation and just sharing our perspectives, and never is the intention to be derogatory or to be hurtful or to be ignorant in any way. We're just sharing. But I think it's interesting because listening to you, what emerged for me is like, so first we had this idea of like, what is women in business? And then thinking, okay, it's just women, like professional women. And then it's like, well, what does that mean? As opposed to what unprofessional women? It's like, okay, so how about just women? So like adult women that are trying to get by in life and have a career. How about that? Yeah. Okay, so it's adult women who are trying to get by in life and have a career. There we go. But then the next piece you were talking about, and I think it's again an interesting way to look at it, putting being assertive and kind of juxtaposing that with femininity is really interesting. And also about being taken seriously, etc. I think it's an interesting one. And I think it's like really the crux of it. And I also think it's a part of the conversation that is probably most difficult to have, which is why it's not as often talked about. Certainly not from big stages and that kind of thing. I think this is a kind of conversation that happens one-on-one or with trusted people. And how risque are we that we're going to have this conversation publicly? So
I still assume no one is listening and I'm just having a coffee with you.
Yeah, it's just the two of us. So tell me, I'm curious. Yeah, we do. Are there, is there a particular story or an experience that you've had in your, career, we'll say, business life, career life, that you think of as your kind of gender playing a pivotal role? Does it make sense?
It does. I'm thinking, and what's funny? I never really thought of myself. So my parents divorced when I was quite young. I think that's important to say. So I was raised by my mom. She's a strong personality, and always worked even two jobs because two kids, and you know how it goes. Like the classic story, right? Nothing new here. Everyone has a story like that. But what that taught me is that I need to be strong and not really take no for an answer, because you just need to you just need to make do with what you have, and you just need to find a solution. So why I'm sharing that, because that has a specific influence in my mentality and how I approach things. So I never really saw that the fact that I'm a woman will not help. I will not be able to achieve things. There were other aspects that actually worried me, but not necessarily my gender. Not until later. So my attitude was more like, I just need to get shit done. How do I approach it? What do I need to do? What needs to happen? And just go for it. So even if there were things that happened and they were definitely. I never perceived them like that because I
Sure.
didn't really look for that.
Mm.
However, I did hear different, for example, two friends of mine that had a business together. Um, one of them, she's gay, the other not, one not. Business partners 50-50. And they were like, one of them was sharing, the straight one was sharing, like, I had a business discussion and then told no to that person, and that person was going to my business partner trying to get a yes because of different energy. So I did hear about things like that quite a lot. Or
Mm. Mm.
you are discussing and they are trying to go around and to see if I go to your boss or to your male colleague will be different. I did had
Mm.
experience while working in companies that I was asked to work more because I was producing, but my male colleagues that weren't producing the results that we are requested to were not so were not kept accountable as much as I was, because they were buddy and going and having drinks with the boss afterwards. So I did
Mm. Mm.
that,
Mm.
but from slightly different, or I never really perceived it, is because of actually the last part, yes. But
Yeah. Yeah.
makes sense what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. No, it does. I get that. So as you were describing it, what came to mind for me is like, yeah, it sounds like game playing, like a lot of
It
like
is.
kind of tap dancing and like manipulation per se. Maybe that's a harsh word, but I'm trying to think what else to call it. Sometimes a spade is a spade.
Yeah.
So it sounds a little bit like that type of scenario, which I think is, yeah, I think it's a relative word to this conversation. Um, and that can be perceived in a lot of different ways. But the other thing I hear you, it sounds like talking about is kind of that super old, like very typical thing, like the old boys club, right? And that
Yeah.
can often happen. And it's a tricky one. And I know from conversations I've had with friends and colleagues over the years, this other kind of perceived truth. It's like if you can't beat them, join them, or if you want to be you've got to be one of the
Mm-hmm.
guys to have access,
Exactly.
to the same type of thing. And what does that mean? And what the hell with that already? It's an interesting one. So
But
how? Go ahead.
sorry to jump in, but from this
Yeah.
discussion, actually, like a lot of other discussions, what we are doing here is we need to change as women to be
Mm.
accepted. But why
Mm.
don't they have to change as well? Why are we,
Because they don't have
has
the capacity. They don't have the capacity.
I disagree with that, because there are a
No.
lot of examples where
Yeah.
men are really inclusive and everything is great. So let's not go to the negativity, because that will not be fair.
I was just kidding. Relax. I was just kidding, saying
No,
they
no.
don't have the capacity. It's like, just
I, I
kidding.
do I do think they have the capacity, but I do think it's a matter of education. Educating them, they have to do that, and just
Mm.
um, keeping them accountable. Because if no one keeps them accountable, why would they change? Like, honestly, would you
Mm.
change if
Mm.
something works for you and no one is really asking you or keeps you accountable to do that? Because
Mm.
change takes time.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just debating. I
True.
don't have the answer. I don't know.
No, change does take time. It does, and it's like I feel like there's a marketing analogy in there, because it's like marketing, right? They say somebody has to see something 7 or 9
Seven times.
times
Yeah,
from
the ad.
7 different people,
Yeah.
7 different ways to finally get it. So I feel like it's really human behavior. So I feel like it's change management's change. So in order for people to change, they have to have multiple opportunities for it.
And here we are talking
So
actually about culture change, and that will take can take even a
mm.
generation. Actually, it does
Mm.
take 1 or 2 generations to have that complete change in mentality. And I
Mm.
think there are studies. I don't know by heart the numbers. So it's definitely things start changing a little bit. What's your experience actually? Because I do come from Europe, but you're from the States. How is this perceived there?
Yeah, so my experience, so I actually have a fair amount of uh, to say on this topic because, starting from the beginning, when I started my first business when I was 20. So I was in, business circles and, communities and such, as a very young female. And so I learned immediately, or internalized, I suppose, and responded to that by making certain that I presented myself in a professional manner and what I deemed to be or understood to be a professional manner. And so, what that meant for me was I was in a suit and heels, and I wore my hair in a ponytail, um, because I recognized the difference in how I was treated if I had my hair down. And as
Mm.
maybe trite or ridiculous as that sounds, and this is back when I used to have my normal hair, which is very long, thick, super curly hair. As anybody who is watching on video, you can see I have crazy curls. And yeah, anyway, so I had long hair until a year ago. So I learned quickly to pull my hair back and to dress pretty conservatively. Um, and my posture and how I would hold myself up, like I would stand tall and be sure of like body language and my physical space and or personal space and things like that. I paid attention to the way I would shake hands, etc. So I learned all those things very young. And I also, yeah, of course, I received, I heard lots of things. A lot of people said a lot of things to me. And what I began to learn, I suppose, is or focus on was intent. And I began to, for me in my story, I began to realize that a lot of the men that I was around were genuinely good guys, and oftentimes didn't realize things that they would say or do were offensive
Yeah,
because their intention was not to do that. They would be really embarrassed and frankly mortified if they realized that the things I said and did could be considered, yeah, inappropriate. So I ended
I
up
agree.
having lots of those conversations with lots of those guys, in a way that was matter of fact, but also not persecuting them either.
Yeah,
You know,
an open discussion. And
yeah.
I agree with you. I experienced something similar. And this is why I mentioned it's about culture and it's about education
Mm,
because it's a
mm,
bias. They do it without really recognizing it. And I'm pretty sure we respond subconsciously to a level the same because we
mm,
were taught the same. I think only a couple of our generation, maybe one or two behind us, are properly changing the way we are doing it.
mm,
Not
mm.
that I'm not saying there are women that are fighting for hundreds of years, but
Yeah.
that's real change in how things are done, how we are perceived. But there are still a lot of like looking at the numbers, you see statistics. So it's not perception here, they're
Mm, mm,
numbers. How many
mm,
women in business? How many funds are going to them? How many of these funds are
mm.
actually going to tech that we are coming?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
shows we are perceived as women only good in specific areas.
Mm. So that's, we know this, that I really like data and I like statistics and things like that. I also think they can be, yeah, they're not all created equal, and there's a lot more. It's like the backstory of them can be more telling sometimes. So in this, so for me, another, I feel like, qualitative data point, is something that I just do routinely now. It's a simple thing, but whenever I'm learning about somebody on LinkedIn, I always will scroll to the very bottom to see who did they select as their top voices, or the people that I think it's called top, no, what is it called? I forget what the section is called.
I'm
I don't know.
gonna
It's
look
it's
now.
at the bottom of your profile, and look
Yeah.
at who are the people that they're kind of following, or who are the top voice people that they selected. And it's so interesting how I would say an overwhelming majority are men, and even female profile, like across the board, it's like a lot of men and it's a lot of white men. And so I always think that's interesting. So that's, you know, like I said, it's just a data point. And for a lot of people, even people listening, are probably like, oh, I wonder what I have on mine. Let me go look. And so, you know, probably a lot. Yeah. So that's a good like note to look there. But it is also true, for years and years and forever, men have dominated media, and especially white men have dominated all the history books and all of everything. So as there's fewer, you know, articles, or, you know, it's not as easy, you know, for, you know, men, it's like you can't take two steps in any industry without finding gobs of articles and features about men. But to find a women talking about or being recognized is takes more time. So that's one thing, and that I'm also trying to be cognizant of that. Be aware of looking for a female voice as well. And so I very much pay attention to articles, to panels, to events, to any group, any board. I'm always paying attention to the female representation, because I think it's really important.
I love that you brought it here, because when we organized the first edition of BASE, actually for all of them, so one thing that was very clear to us was that we want an equal panel. So that means not for each conversation, because if you have 3 people, it's impossible to have three equality. But overall, we had always an equal number of speakers, female and male. So that was very clear to us, without actually, so keeping also the best person for that particular topic. So not eliminating one. And I was discussing with other events organizers, and they were complaining that it's very hard to find a good female speaker for specific topics. And I was like, that's not true. That's really not true. I disagree completely, because it wasn't like I did it. So this conference 4 editions, we made it, no problem. But you do need to put the work, and you do need to be curious, and you do need to speak with people. And exactly what you said, don't stay with the mainstream, because then you'll be stuck. So
or you may also need a fabulous resource that I have that you just perfectly set the table for me to share. So thank you for that. Which unbeknownst to you, I actually have this resource. So there's a phenomenal global organization called Innovation Women, and they do exactly what you're talking about. So it's phenomenal it's like a speakers bureau for women. So there's a tremendous amount of resources for women that want to, you know, build their own platforms and have access to speaking opportunities, but also has value for conference organizers, et cetera, event organizers that are trying to be more proactive and do a better job at speaker selection, can access their global network to help find speakers on a range of topics. So we'll definitely include the link to that. And so anybody listening, it's a great idea. Honestly, in full disclosure, I've been an advisor to this organization, but regardless of that, it's a really phenomenal organization. I know the founder well. I know the traction that they've had. I know the resources that they put into it. And so just creating a profile, it's more than just creating a profile. They have a lot of, like I said, content and whatnot available for people. So getting the word out there, like about Innovation Women and other platforms that must exist, to help make it easier for folks organizing events and things to be more selective.
And I'm pretty sure I speak for you as well. If you're organizing an event and you want good female speakers on any topic, just reach out to Jillian and myself, and I'm more than happy to open my network. And and let's make a change, because everything, honestly, it's up to us, and to, like, not only women but all of us, if we really want to have this change, just to make it. And it's not as hard. You do need to work. Honestly, to have a good speaker, you do need to work a little bit and to speak with people and to find that. So it doesn't really matter the gender.
No, it's true.
I think it's just an excuse.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And that's why I'm like, check out Innovation Women, and it takes you a few minutes to access, hundreds of speakers, thousands of speakers from around the world on all different topics. So, but I wanted to go back to another thread that you kind of laid out there about the change and change taking time, etc. So that also reminded me of another, I think, pretty relevant story. Because as I mentioned, so I started in business as a young woman, right? And so I continued, and therefore, I was around a lot of, business people who were generally 20 or 30 years my senior, and most often majority male, right? That's just kind of what my life was. So it's probably no surprise then that that became my comfort zone, right? So by the time I was 25, I was pretty routinely with groups of men. So it's like men in their 60s and 70s has been like, that's my jam for like all of these years. So for me, it's been interesting to become aware of that, and then to learn, I suppose, to be open and comfortable working with women that are, or just women, and women that are my age is like very, feels unnatural to me. So that's something that I'm working on. It's really interesting. But one quick story I'll just share that is, I mean, it can be, hopefully it comes out, hopefully it's received the way it's intended. But in any case, so quick story. So I got a call one day from a client, and he's like, "Hey, Jillian." He's like, "Listen, I was playing golf today with a buddy of mine, and he's working on some startup, something he's working on, and he was mentioning something about Facebook and some things with social media, and I don't know." And I said, you've got to talk to Jillian. So I'm just giving you a heads up that Mike is going to call you, and that's who he is. I was playing golf with him, and like, thanks for the call. So I hung up, and then Mike calls me, and so I have a conversation with Mike, and it ends up being a couple hours long. He's an executive, so he was an executive from Connecticut in the US. I was in the Boston area, and so we had a couple hour conversation. Then he asked if we could meet for lunch. So he drove up from Connecticut, a couple hour drive, to meet with me. So we had a lunch. And so that conversation evolved into me being a part of this group that was building this new organization in preparation to raise $300 million, right? It was pretty crazy. So all from our conversation about Facebook. And so that's a separate part of the thing, which is I didn't jump into the call asking him about his Facebook. I asked about his business situation and discovered it actually had nothing to do with Facebook, but that was just their conversation. And so anyway, so that's how the opportunity went from Facebook to like $300 million raise. Anyway, here's the story with respect to being a woman. So going through this whole thing, one day we were meeting with some potential investors. And so it's myself with all the guys sitting around a conference table, and this pitch is about to start and whatnot. And so I sat down, and I had my computer with me and, whatnot, taking notes, and to do what I do. And the guy at the other end of the table, he said, "Oh, Jillian," he said, he sat down, he put his pad of paper down and a pencil, his legal pad. He said, "Oh, Jillian, you're going to take notes?" And I looked at him and I was like, "Oh, are your hands broken?" And he was like, and the guys in the room were like, and they all just, and I just kind of smiled, and he was like, "No, I can take notes." I'm like, "Great." Well, guess what? They never asked me to take notes again. And it was like one of those moments where they were like really surprised by it, but it was also, then there was like, it kind of shuffled the energy. It was like a one, like icebreaker. Like then it was like, because the way I said it was very direct, but then like, "Come on." And then they realized it, and there was a laugh, but there was also a big collective touche. Because what?
Awareness
I'm the female
moment.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm
so
not your
that
secretary.
story, yeah, I'm not. That's
I'm
not my
serving
role.
a different role here. Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Why do you have your legal pad and your little number 2 pencil there? I'm sure you can scribble, dabble, scrabble in your notebook just like I can." And he did. So funny enough, that story ended up being featured in an article by the Wall Street Journal talking about women in the roles that we often play. Is it like the chores, or like the roles that women often are the ones in an office setting, that do like the birthday, or we organize the birthday things, or we put the dishes in the dishwasher, all these things, like taking notes and whatnot. So but for me, the part of that is that was an opportunity, the way I felt about it, an opportunity for me to I don't want to say teach these guys, but to put up a mirror to these guys. And I want to say, in their defense, it's not really, but in their defense, many of them are accustomed to having female admin execs or assistants.
But they are the one hiring them.
Yeah,
so
that's what happens. But they're used to that.
Saying there. Yeah.
Yep. That's what happens. So that's what they know. And so it's not that they like were conscious of it, really. And that's what I'm saying. And so there's a lot of that. So that's been one of the generally fun, sometimes scary, and other times maddening, but experiences, kind of threads of my career over these 25 years, is having and how I handle those situations when they arise, because they arise pretty regularly.
Yeah, I'm actually so happy you shared that, because when I was discussing more at the beginning of this episode about biases and culture, this is exactly what I meant. It's so common that she's better, she's studying more, she's writing more, she's paying more attention to details, so she should take the notes. And no, why? That everyone should take their own notes. Then if you look, like the examples that you gave make me think about, like traditionally it seems the woman role in the society is to prepare everything. Actually, we are doing everything, and the men will just choose A or B. So if we are anyways doing the entire work, let us make the decision, because our decision will be way better, because we did the groundwork.
Did the work. Right. See it through.
So we know exactly. So it's not it will be a much more a better and more well-informed decision than a man that will just listen to some notes, because the notes may lose some of the nuances of the meanings or what happened. So maybe what we need to do is actually just I think kudos to you. Everyone should do that. Just be assertive and say, no, that's not my role here. You need to do that.
Yeah. Another one I'm just going to share for 2 seconds, because I have to tell you this one, because just a quick one. I had another one that I feel like it's probably, it's a relevant example. So a few years back, I got a call from one of my guys. So we chat. So over the years, I have built relationships with folks that find, like founders of companies, or they acquire companies, or they are raising capital for lots of related stuff. And so one of the guys called me up about a project he was working on and wanted to tell me about it and see if I could participate in some way. So we had a good chat. And at the time, it was like, I had that, I feel like, now that I'm saying it, like, oh yes, of course, very classic situation where I was like extremely pregnant and like extremely uncomfortable. But I also was really interested in what he was saying, and I wanted the opportunity to work with him. So I don't even know if I told him, I'm trying to remember if I told him I was pregnant, or like pregnant as in like any minute now pregnant. So what ended up happening is the day after we talked, I gave birth. And so I always go back to that, because like I said, I'm not certain, but I remembered feeling at the time like I didn't want to tell him, because I didn't want that to change his view of me, of like, oh, now she's going to be not available so I didn't want to lose. I had the sense of not wanting to lose that opportunity because I was pregnant, and I didn't want him to see me that way. So I remember feeling conflicted by that. But I think I did tell him, and he knows I have my son now. But anyway, but that I feel like is one of those things, like, how do you handle, perception of being a woman, or like, being pregnant, or, if the responsibility is like, go pick up the kids, or all of these things where it's like drives me crazy when men like, oh, I don't know, my wife handles that. I'm like, well, what the hell's wrong with you, dude? Like, they're your kids too. Whatever.
Exactly.
Drives me nuts. Yeah.
I know we should end this episode because it becomes very long, but I think we need to address this because it's a very good. No, I'm not going to stop it. I want to address this because why is assumed like, okay, when you're pregnant, you are carrying the baby, and the first 2-3 months you have no choice. You need to be for the baby. So that's biology. We don't discuss that.
Although in the US, a lot of women go back to the office 3 days later. So continue.
That's quite screwed up for the relationship, for the baby, and also for the mom.
For all kinds of reasons, but continue. Just had to throw that
we're
in
not
there.
going to go into that discussion now. Because it's never going to end. But coming back to that, so I do actually not the entire pregnancy. You can still work and everything can be good, but you do need that time off after you had the kid. No question about it. However, when you're negotiating a business deal, especially a big one, from the moment you have the first interaction until you actually go and do something, it usually takes at least 4 months, if not 6 to 1 year. So the first thing that comes to my mind is I can have a first call now and continue in 4 months and still work with that person, even if the person is pregnant. So why the fact that you're going to have a baby changes everything? If you're really looking objectively,
I don't know, but I can tell you it did. It did for me as the
I know
person
I know it does. It does with everyone.
But,
it does with everyone. But let's change the perspective here. Let's change the discussion. So instead of thinking, oh, she will not be available because of the baby, let's think, how long does it take? I just want the first contact when I need the second contact, and what's the equation. So I'm saying this. I know it's not happening, but I'm putting it out there. Maybe somebody's picking it up, and we can actually change something. The second one is exactly like you said, like the fact that you have a baby, that doesn't mean you can't be a business woman. That doesn't mean your professional life needs to stop. Why the father can't take care of the kid? And what I love about the Netherlands is the fact that men have the papa dag, where they will actually go and stay with the kid home, or they will share responsibilities. Not all of them, but the majority does. And it's not only in the Netherlands. It starts becoming much more common in Europe. So why just one? Maybe the man is actually not that good at work, or he hates it. Like, let him stay home and do that. Why do always we need to presume that he needs to bring more money? Actually, it happened also in my previous relationship. At a specific point, I earned more, and the mother of the boyfriend was, oh, how is that possible? Like, what's the issue? What's the issue? So it's a mentality thing that we need to switch. And it doesn't come only from men, actually from women, because some of them are like,
no, absolutely. I think there's a lot, like I was saying, on the surface, it's like, oh, that's a good topic. But when you start digging into it, there's a lot of tentacles here. And it's us. And some women do think that their husband or male partner should be making more money and that they would prefer to be home. I have one of my best friends from growing up told me, we were like very similar all growing up, but as you know, talking as adults, as young adults, she told me that her goal in life is to be married to a man to take care of her, and so she could stay home and have lots of babies. And I was like, wow, that's amazing.
If that makes her happy.
So for her, that's what she wanted, and that's what she got. It's great. Mine is a little different. I have a wife, and so we have a very equal partnership, and I'm the one that carried the child, but she's the one that took care of him mostly for the first 3 months while I was recovering, Anyway, it's aside from that. I think this bit about women in business, or as we tried to reframe, like adult women who are trying to live life and have careers, right? There's a lot of things at play here. I mean, we touched on some of it, is like the imposter syndrome. do we take ourselves seriously? Do other people take us seriously? You know, is the glass ceiling? Do we like our level of assertiveness?
We didn't even touch those.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many pieces to it. And certainly every woman definitely has their own stories and experiences, and probably like nodding their heads as we're chatting. But I do think it's important, even though it feels like, yeah, we all know this. I think it's important for us to continue to talk amongst ourselves, to learn, but also for self-reflection as well, to look at and to identify, you know, how are we showing up as women in business? What decisions are we making? How are we projecting ourselves? How are we treating other women?
Yes,
as well. It's
that's
a really
very important
one.
Yes, that's how do we treat them, and how do we want to proceed? How do I want to show up? And also,
yes,
the moment you see something is not okay and you feel it's not okay, like your perfect example, take notes. How do we address it? Do we address it, or do we just shut up and fill in that traditional role? And I hope we are not. I hope for all our listeners we are not. And I hope for the male listeners, they will, the moment they want to ask that, they will stop and think twice before doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I say to my guys, like, I could be your sister or your daughter or your sister-in-law. And would you say that? Would you want him speaking, like saying what you just said to me? Would you want him saying that to your daughter? Probably not.
Yeah.
So you probably shouldn't say that to me. It's like, oh yeah, you know.
I think this is what we need to do, just help them understand what is happening.
Yeah.
Because until we don't have that, it's impossible to change. I feel we need several episodes on this topic, and actually I'm very curious to hear stories from our listeners. If how did you perceive it? What is happening? Is this a topic that you are interested in? Maybe we could bring some experts, not and share different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if there's a particular area of this, like women in business, that we could further explore in a future episode, that would be interesting too. But other than that, I feel like this is a good place to wrap up episode 15.
Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the next one. Bye.
All right. Cheers.